Hello everyone and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah.
And boy, what a couple of days it's been. Just a couple of days. I was like, it's been a week. And then I was like, no, it's been 2 days.
Yeah, it's been a couple of days. We're going to jump right into it, everybody, because it is just that time of year where we, frankly, have way too much to discuss in the best way possible. We've got Champions League semifinals. So we're really at that point of Champions League where we got to highlight some of this stuff. WSL nearing the end of the season, just 3 games left in the WSL. We got a lot to talk about there. And the NWSL is in full swing. So it's like everything coming together for a beautiful explosion. And we're going to cover it all right here. We're going to kick it off with a few news-worthy topics segments. We're just going to bounce through some of these because they're worth discussing, but none of them are like game specific. So we're just going to head into it.
Yeah. So first off, we mentioned it last week, but it was the end of the NWSL trade window. It finished on Friday, and the big talking point was obviously, was Maria Sanchez going to get out of Houston after everything that went down? We didn't know if anybody would take on such a massive contract, and lo and behold, someone did.
I'm not going to lie. This is a lot that San Diego gave up to get Maria Sanchez. So Maria Sanchez goes to San Diego Wave. In exchange, the Wave sent $300,000 in intra-league transfer funds, $200,000 in allocation money, and an international slot in 2024 and 2025. They will, on top of that, take on Sanchez's contract of 3 years plus a 4th-year option, total compensation of $1.5 million. That is a lot of money. But you know what? This team just sold for a ton of money, too. They've got deep pockets. They can do it. I'm excited to see Maria Sanchez in San Diego.
Absolutely. Now, the second big shocking trade, which I think no one saw coming, which was...
Total blindside. Total blindside.
Anna-Katrin Berger has gone from Chelsea to Gotham. Nobody saw this coming. I would call you a liar if you told me that you did. Obviously, she dropped out of favour at Chelsea, and the goalkeeping position went between Musovic and now it's Hannah Hampton. I honestly thought she might retire at the end of the WSL season, but no. Berger continues and has gone and staked a claim in New Jersey, New York, Gotham.
I think it's a great move. I was shocked, but then when you look at it, you're like, okay, this makes sense. Berger, she still wants to be a starting keeper on a good team in a good league. What I don't want to start being the narrative here is like, oh, all of these players who can no longer make it in the WSL are coming to America, kind of like what happens in the MLS. That's not what this is, okay? But when you look at it, it's a great move for all parts. Frankly, Gotham needed a solid starting goalkeeper. They had made some trades to get that in the offseason. It hasn't been working out for them, so they made a move that needed to be made. I think this is really good for Gotham, and it's really good for Berger.
I think the shocking thing, and this is the last thing I'll say, I think the shocking thing is a lot of UK people didn't realise that, and I think it's worth explaining, that transfer windows apply only to the buying club, not the selling club. You can get rid of a player at any time of the year. You can only buy players within the transfer window, because a lot of people were like, wait, the WSL transfer window ended in January and doesn't begin again until August. And it's like, no. The NWSL's one is still going. But yeah, so just to clarify that.
All right, before we get into it, because the first topic we're going to drive into is Champions League, and our game of the week is from Champions League. But before we do, a couple of fun facts.
So first, this weekend, Sophia Smith has passed Sam Kerr as the youngest player to reach 50 goals in the NWSL.
More NWSL fun facts. Racing Louisville versus Utah Royals marked the first time 2 former NWSL players have faced off as coaches in the NWSL. That's A-Rod for Utah and Bev Yanez for Racing Louisville. They competed against each other in the 2014 and 2015 NWSL championships as players.
And then Kansas City and Bay FC was also historic for yet another reason, as both coaches had won titles in previous iterations of the league in the USA. Albertine Montoya for Bay FC won the 2010 WPS title with FC Gold Pride, And Vlatko Andonovski won 2 NWSL championships with FC Casey.
And finally, a couple of pieces of news, neither of them positive, but we feel the need to include this here before we really dive into it. First and foremost, Alex Loera of Bay FC unfortunately announced that she tore her ACL. She was Bay FC's first ever signing for the team. She was really that core defensive center mid, that core six that a lot of the team was built around. It's just heartbreaking to see for her, for the team, for everything.
And very finally, Bonmati did an interview ahead of the Champions League game against Chelsea. In an interview with the BBC, she said that nothing has really changed within the Spanish both national team and league since the World Cup, and obviously Jorge Vilda's departure, which is sad yet unsurprising.
This topic needs more than just a little bit of a moment at the top of this episode. We're breaking it down in our News in 10 on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/TheWoso Show. So you can head over there and listen more about that. We promised during the World Cup that we were going to continue to highlight all of these things, and we are.
So we have to start with the 2 massive games that happened this weekend. It was, of course, the first leg of the Champions League semi-final. It was Chelsea away to Barcelona and Lyon at home to PSG.
Yep.
And before we're breaking down, because there was a lot of debate. Me and Sarah, I have to say, when we were prepping this episode, we do not agree on anything this week, it seems.
We agree on some things.
We're not great. So I would like you guys to hit us up on our socials. Which was the better game? Was the Chelsea-Barcelona game better? Or was the Lyon-PSG game better? Because my response may surprise you based on my rants from previous weeks.
I was going to say, well, first and foremost, both of these games were fantastic games. Both of them delivered. So it's just kind of like a fun question, which was more exciting. But it all came about because I was like, obviously we have to highlight Chelsea beating Barcelona. And you were like, pretty sure the other game was the most exciting game. I'd rather talk about the other game. Now, fret not, listeners. We're talking about them both. I'm going to go out and say, look, the Lyon PSG game was a more exciting game. It was end to end. We had a 3-goal comeback, those 3 goals in 10 minutes. Come on to that. But it was sloppy. It was not like the prettiest soccer. The Chelsea game, Chelsea-Barcelona, was tactically brilliant. It was tight. It just wasn't end to end goals, goal fest exciting. But I found it to be a fantastic game. Utterly exhilarating, exciting. How can it not be when a team finally beats Barcelona at home?
Yeah, I think it is very much depending on what you like in your football. Whereas I don't mind a good tactical game. I prefer the more sloppy, crazy, exciting, I don't know where this is going kind of game, which is probably why I was like, Barcelona-Chelsea, I was like, okay, I'm done. After the first half, I'm done.
Wow. Allie, I can't believe you gave up on it after the first half. You should be utterly ashamed of yourself.
I carried on watch the whole thing. Okay. It's just I was mentally checked out. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, but I prevailed. And our game of the week, everybody, is the Barcelona versus Chelsea game. Chelsea won 1-0 at Barcelona. As a reminder, this was the first home defeat in 5 years for Barcelona, and they failed to score for the first time in 2 years at home. I mean, we knew Barcelona was dominant, but those are some crazy statistics. And to be the team that finally does that, we got to talk about what happened.
So we're just going to touch on the home team very quickly because, let's be honest, there isn't much to say about Barcelona. Barcelona did do Barcelona things. It was Chelsea were just tactically better set up, and I don't think Barcelona were ready or expecting that. They had opportunities. They had shots on target. They definitely dominated in the first 20 minutes. It just didn't pay off for them. I will say that we have seen little chinks in Barcelona's armour this season. They obviously dropped points for the first time in a long time with a draw this season. Obviously that's not a loss, but we're not seeing the undefeatable Barcelona that we've come to know and expect, like we've said with those stats. But it's very much was a Chelsea win rather than a Barcelona loss. And that is an important distinction to make. And I know Sarah is just chomping at the bit to talk about all things Chelsea and what Chelsea did right. So let's get on to the winning side. Let's talk Chelsea. How did they do it?
I think you said it best there. Like, the reason I'm excited to talk about Chelsea is because this wasn't necessarily a Barcelona blunder. This was just a Chelsea win, and that's what it was. Oh my God, there's so much to say about tactically what Emma Hayes did here. So let's maybe start with overall. I just want to say that this was a masterclass across the field of both organization and execution on the part of Chelsea. Truly, I have rarely seen something like this. We could be calling out every single player, because this was the definition, I think, of playing your role on the field. That's what every single player on this field did for Chelsea. It was a matter of them coming in and playing their exact role and executing exactly what they had talked about. And it was a masterclass. That is what I have to say about it. So let's break it down a little more tactically here. Chelsea came out, and when they were on offense, they were set up in kind of their more regular 3-5-2. But when Barcelona had the ball, that quickly became a 5-4-1 on defense. So the two wing players in that 5-person midfield, in Lawrence and Kennard, were running those wings, and they were dropping all the way into the back line as left back and right back in that 5-back defense on defense. And then Lauren James would drop into the midfield and leave Ramirez as that sole forward to create that 5-4-1 on defense. And I just have to say, first and foremost, this is so much running for the wings. This is a job well done by them, because to get up and down the field that quickly, anytime I looked, the moment the ball was turned over, suddenly they were already in line with the back line. The moment it was turned over again, suddenly they were already running the flanks, trying to get open for Ramirez and for that long ball over the top. So just a great job from the wings. And I really want to call out Lawrence, because she had that tall task of running the same side as Graham Hansen, and she played some lockdown defense.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I do think this was a Emma Hayes masterclass, if you will, about getting the right players in the right beat at the right time. And they just managed to block every Barcelona attack.
Yeah. Barcelona, they looked like Barcelona. It was the tiny little final piece, right? And it's kind of similar to how Lyon started. Just Lyon were able to figure it out. But Barcelona, it was perfect all the way through until that final little piece. And it's because Chelsea were so organized across that back five. Barcelona, when it came to that final piece, when they can make that final pass to fully break down that defense, they couldn't find it. And a massive credit to Chelsea's organization for that. And I said we could call it every player. I really could, but I really want to highlight, not just the midfield, but specifically Leupold, who played, I think, a really key role on the counter for Chelsea. She was that center mid that could break out of the midfield from defense to offense transition and play the counter with Mayra Ramirez, so Ramirez wasn't left fully alone at the top. And that is everything. If that doesn't happen, Ramirez is alone at the top, Chelsea automatically turn the ball back over, and then it's just a Barcelona onslaught the whole game. And because there were midfielders that were able to release so quickly, that is how Chelsea were able to get their opportunities to keep possession and not just sit back in their back five. They aren't successful if the center midfielders don't do that. And I called out Leupold specifically, but Newskin and Cuthbert, great games as well.
I do want to shout out Erin Cuthbert, because she has been so key for Chelsea for so long and is dyed in the wool Chelsea blue. And for not only to have such an important performance defensively, and she was in there making sure, again, keeping Barcelona at bay, but obviously she got the goal. And it's one of those things that she just pops up and just scores these absolute bangers of goals at the right time when Chelsea need her to. So I just wanted to shout out Erin Cuthbert.
She's leveled up
on
this
that
year.
one.
You said she's always been consistent, and she has, but she is on a brand new level this year.
So let's talk about a moment that could have changed the game, not in Chelsea's favour, in Barcelona's favour. Second half, Barcelona on one of their many attacks, and there is a handball by Buchanan in the area. That would have been a stonewall penalty, and that, like, you can't argue with that. It was a handball,
Yep.
and it would have potentially changed the game because it's likely Barcelona would have converted it, made it 1-1. However, the Barcelona player was pulled back for offside, meaning that the foul doesn't count. How crucial was that call?
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. That changed the course of the game. I mean, obviously, we don't know what would have happened in the pen. Hannah Hampton could have saved it, but statistically, probably Barcelona tucked that away. It's a 1-1 game. We don't know what can happen from there. Maybe it stays 1-1. Maybe Barcelona finally break through and they add to that scoreline. But quite honestly, that's what saved the win for Chelsea. That's what saved it. And it was offside. It was by the tiniest margin. Sometimes that's just how games are decided. It was huge.
And then very finally, before we move on to the next game, we do have to talk about some comments that were made by Bonmati in a after the game press conference. She was asked about the performance and she said that Chelsea played dirty and didn't like the idea of playing them again. Now, she didn't elaborate on what she meant by that, and so it's been inferred in two different ways, so I just want to cover them both very quickly. One, some have inferred it meant that Chelsea were more physical than Barcelona are used to, because anybody who watches the Spanish league, it is not a very physical game. It tends to be more tactics and very more of a, I don't know what the word is, but it's just you get very few shoulder barges. It's not as physical. Others are saying have interpreted it that she meant that they were time wasting and that was dirty because players stayed down for a long period of time to disrupt flow. And yeah.
Was this press conference in English or in Spanish?
English. Okay.
Well, so that leaves a lot up for interpretation. Obviously, if somebody's doing a press conference in not their native language, they're not going to be able to describe what they mean quite as well. If I'm taking it at face value, or really just like either of the two suggestions that you just made of what it could mean, both of them I kind of say deal with it too. I mean, truly, I watched that game. Yes, there was time wasting. Was it more than what we've seen in women's football? Was it excessive? Absolutely not. It was a very normal amount of time wasting. There were also 10 added minutes of stoppage time at the end, right? Did Chelsea play dirty? No. Did they play physical? Oh, absolutely. And quite honestly, if I was in Emma Hayes' position, that would be one of the first things I would have said to my team of, hey, this is one of the most tactically proficient teams in the world, if not the most tactically proficient team in the world, both individually and as a team. How do you throw off rhythm? Get a body on them. Play physical. There's a difference between physical and dirty. Obviously, I wasn't on that field. Maybe it was dirtier than it appeared on the screen, but it really didn't appear to me that Chelsea were being dirty. They were being physical. And I just think that that's smart. And that's something that Barcelona just need to, frankly, learn how to deal with a little bit better.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I'm like, if she meant physical, then I'm like, yeah, just deal with that, because the WSL is a physical league and football is a contact sport, as I have to keep telling people. So, tackles, things like that do happen. Yeah. If she meant time wasting, that's a whole other conversation that we can have, because I'm getting tired of it and I get her point.
Yeah. I agree. It's not to say either of these things aren't annoying when you're on the other side of it. They are.
Like, we need to clamp that down, but that is another conversation, because we have another game we need to talk about, and I want to talk about this one.
Let's do it.
So let's talk about the other semi-final, the one that surprised me, because if anybody is a regular listener, as you all should be, to our podcast, you will know that I was not thrilled by having another all-French semi-final.
No.
I was like, no, they keep playing each other all the time. This is going to be so boring.
And what did I say, Allie? What did I say in response to this?
That competition football is very different. And I hold my hands up and go, you were right, I was wrong, because this game was phenomenal. phenomenal, because this is the kind of football I like. As I said at the top, I like it being messy and crazy and end to end, and you don't know what's going to happen and you're not quite sure what the tactics are, but everybody's just going for it. I think that's what it felt like me. If I was going to say, the Barcelona-Chelsea game felt very reserved. It was very planned and thought out. This game was, excuse my French, pun intended, it was balls to the wall, like, and just craziness. And, like, all 5 goals, so the first 2 for PSG came in the first half within 4 minutes of each other. Lyon managed to not only equalise, but win in 6 minutes towards the end.
Well, one of PSG's was at the end of the first half. The other was at the start of the second.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, if you look at the timing, it was still within 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, but just with the half-time break. But then, but Lyon, it was 6 minutes, 3 goals.
It didn't even feel like 6 minutes. It felt like 3 minutes. It truly felt like goal, kickoff, goal, kickoff, goal.
Well, that's what the last
what just
2
happened.
That was the last 2. The last 2 were literally goal, kickoff, and then goal. It was like, Lyon!
Let's get into like really what happened with each, because whenever a team is up 2-0 and they blow a lead, and not just blow a lead, but they blow it within 6 minutes and they allow 3 goals in 6 minutes to then lose the game, we got to talk about what happened on either side of the ball. But I have to just say, Allie, this is what I was saying. This is what you get when teams that know each other well domestically play each other in big competitions, big tournaments. I mean, what happened here is that neither team was at all scared of the other one. There was no fear. Everybody just went in and went right at each other. And those types of matchups are so fun.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. I loved the absolute craziness of it. So let's talk about with PSG, because PSG got the upper hand fairly quickly. It was, like we said, 2 goals very quickly, 1 either side of half time, and they're cruising. They're away, and you're like, in their head, they're like, we can keep this. We're going into a home match for the next leg. That's an advantage, as we've talked about being at home and what an advantage that is. And I think that's what happened, is they got stuck in cruise control, because, and I don't want to use the football cliche of 2-0 is the most dangerous scoreline, but it is. Being 2 goals up is
they
one of them.
They did succumb to it this time. They did. They
succumbed
one of the
to
most
the
cliche.
Dangerous. And what Lyon had that PSG didn't is that Lyon had the wherewithal and they had the bench. Lyon's bench was something that they could pull from, and they knew that they had these legs that was going to get them. One of their subs got the winning goal. Like, Lyon just dug deep and knew what they had to do, and PSG just didn't.
I mean, Marjorie got the winning goal, that third goal for Lyon. And the fact that Marjorie is coming off the bench says a lot about Lyon and who they've got over there. But I agree with what you said about PSG. I don't think it's too much deeper than that. They just got complacent. They abandoned their offense and they just kind of sat and thought, game over. And that's a mistake. Lyon, I think what's interesting is to talk about what happened with Lyon here, because it's not like they were playing terribly when PSG scored those 2 goals. Lyon, throughout the course of this entire game, had the bulk of possession, the bulk of the opportunities. They just weren't converting them. And from where I was sitting, it seemed like everything was great for Lyon until they got into that attacking third. And then the ball movement was just so slow that they couldn't create anything. And listen, I don't know what switch flipped, but that first goal, Diani put it away. Diani, the former PSG player, puts away the first goal for Lyon. And the moment that happened, it was on. It was like something connected for Lyon that hadn't before. And then it was just every single pass in that final third was fast. And they were just throwing everything at it.
I genuinely think it's a mentality thing. Like, we talk about it all the time with Chelsea and how they will dig deep to find a result when they need a result. And I think Lyon have that mentality that PSG have been lacking, especially this season. PSG have been very hit and miss both in the league and in Champions League. And I think that's what it is. It's just a mentality thing. And I just very quickly want to say has an impact on the whole both games, because it seems now that it is pretty much confirmed that Lyon's manager is leaving at the end of this season and is taking on the Chelsea job. So this is interesting.
It does seem to be maybe written that Chelsea's manager, Emma Hayes, will face the person who is taking her place. Listen, that's not for sure, but in terms of how this first leg result went, that does seem how it is unfolding. Before we get into, because I want to just quickly talk about the next leg that's going to happen this weekend, and then we're going to get into the rest of NWSL, WSL, etc. But I got to call out Dumornay, the 20-year-old Haitian national team player, was absolutely, by far and away, the best player on the pitch for Lyon. And when you talk about who Lyon has in their lineup, to say that about a 20-year-old, she had such a standout game, and I just implore everybody to lock their eyes on her this weekend when you watch Leg 2, because it's something special. All right, so finally, before we head out of Champions League World, Allie, one quick question here. Let's talk about Leg 2 happening this weekend. Barcelona is coming into Chelsea. They have to play, they're down 1-0 in aggregate, and they have to play at Stamford Bridge. On the flip side, Lyon is going to PSG, up 3-2 in aggregate. Very different situations. Based on how both of these games unfolded, what do you expect from the Chelsea-Barcelona game, and what do you expect from Lyon-PSG? And this doesn't have to be score lines. It could be, what type of a game do you expect from these two?
The only thing I wish is that the game was at Kingsmeadow, not Stamford Bridge, because I feel like that is such a lock for Chelsea, because Stamford Bridge is not the fortress that Kingsmeadow is for Chelsea yet. So I get wanting to get more people in because it's Champions League, but that irks me a little bit, because I think that's put Chelsea at a slight disadvantage. I think Barcelona are going to bring it. I think they're going to come for it, because this is it. This is what they've got to do. And it's whether or not Chelsea can weather that storm is the honest answer. I don't think we're going to get a game of sitting back. I don't think Chelsea are going to protect just the 1-0, and I think Barca are just going to hammer them. And
I agree. Yeah. I expect fully different tactics from Chelsea as well. I really do. This is going to be a completely different game because it's a completely different situation. All right, over to Lyon, PSG. PSG, of course, playing hosts, coming home down 1 in aggregate. I frankly expect this to be an equally wild game to the first leg. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. That's the thing. I think this is going to be very similar to the first leg, unlike we said about Chelsea-Barcelona, because I think these teams have both got everything and nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. It's only one goal. Like, it's a crazy scoreline, 3-2, but it's one goal. That's it. That's all that's separating them. Again, I think these teams are going to know each other so well. They're going to go hell for leather and just absolutely batter each other. I think we're in for another high-scoring game. I genuinely think we could end up with another 3-2. We could end up with a 4-3, something crazy, because they're just going to keep banging goals in for fun.
Saturday, everybody. It's happening. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Scotland, and all 3 Glaswegian teams won this weekend, keeping the title race tight. Celtic currently lead 2 points ahead of Rangers and 6 points ahead of Glasgow City. At the bottom of the league, Dundee remain at the bottom of the table, still only with 10 points.
And to Australia, the land down under. The first leg of the semi-finals happened this weekend. Sydney narrowly beat Gold Coast 1-0, whereas Melbourne City comfortably beat Newcastle Jets 3-0. The next leg is next week, where we will know who is competing for the title.
To Italy, and Roma are storming the league this year. They are 11 points clear from nearest rivals Juventus. That being said, they could only manage a 0-0 draw against Fiorentina this weekend. Juve, however, managed a 2-1 win in their game to extend the gap and guarantee their Champions League spot for next year.
And finally, to Mexico. Things are hotting up in La Liga MX. What else is new? Tigres are still top of the league, but only 2 points clear of Pachuca and Monterrey. America are 6 points behind, but they are the only team to have won against Tigres. Do not sleep on this league, we will continue to say.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Over to WSL first, before the NWSL. This is the WSL, not the BWSL. I'm just throwing letters around now.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's just acronyms.
Listen, I just still take issue with people who want to call it the BWSL for Barclays WSL. It is just the WSL, everybody. All right, and we're going to kick this off because Allie and I were chatting, of course, before we hit record, and we stumbled onto a pretty funny topic when Allie said that from what they can tell, non-Chelsea fans seem to want anybody but Chelsea to win the league, but also, since we already talked about Champions League, also Champions League. And I said to Allie, this makes no sense to me. Why wouldn't you just root for the final domestic, especially in Champions League? Like, why wouldn't you just root for the final domestic team from England? Don't you want some representation from the WSL, like lifting that trophy for Champions League? I don't get it.
No, and very quickly, Sarah put a poll out just after we asked this question. We've had 40 votes. We've had 40 votes in so far, and it's 70% for anyone but Chelsea, 30% votes for Chelsea.
It's been like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me why, Allie, because like I said, it makes no sense to me. I would assume that you would want an English team lifting the trophy, and you said no, to which I said, the English are very bitter people.
Yeah, you can call us bitter, and I honestly don't think it's bitter. I think there's two things, and we'll talk about Champions League and WSL, two different things, but as a whole, I do think there is a sense that, first off, I don't know about Champions League, but WSL, it would be nice to have a different winner. Chelsea have won it for like the last 4 years in a row. It would be quite nice to have.
Yeah, let's separate these because they are very different. I understand domestically why you want anybody but Chelsea to win because people are sick of Chelsea winning. And even though it is Emma Hayes' last season, I get still being like, well, who cares? You already won it. Go away.
Yeah, basically. Again, Champions League, I think it's to do with the manager. I think Emma Hayes, unfortunately, has undone her legacy a lot in the last, year. I think it started with the Alex Scott book coming out and it coming out that Emma Hayes did some nefarious things, shall we say, including outing players for her own purpose. And then since she's said some very stupid things, and it sort of disintegrated her legacy a bit. So people are now like anyone but Emma Hayes, maybe, rather than anyone but Chelsea.
It still boggles my mind. You have the chance to have a domestic champion, like a team from England lift the Champions League trophy, and you're going to root against them. It blows my mind. It really does. I do understand more for the WSL. You mentioned that
I was going to say
the media is kind of painting it as a picture of like which Cinderella story do you want? Do you want Steph Houghton for City lifting the trophy in her final season? She's been a Lioness England legend for a very long time. Or do you want Emma Hayes in her final season lifting it?
Exactly. So it is that is definitely the flavour and the narrative in the WSL right now is whose final season do you want to cap with a title?
But even if you had nothing but love for Emma Hayes as a coach, that's still kind of an easy answer, right? Because one of them has won it and one of them hasn't.
Steph's won it, just not for a while.
Not for a while. Okay, fair enough.
Because City did the treble a few years ago.
That's right.
So they've both won.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, they've both won it. It's just, who do you want to go out?
The best of both worlds. What if Chelsea wins Champions League and City wins the league? Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody says goodbye with a trophy. Okay. Let's get on to it, though. 3 games left in the WSL. The title race is on, everybody. It is so on. Unfortunately, relegation battle, not so much on. We're going to get into both of those now. And let's start off with the title race, because Chelsea and City were locked on points going into this past weekend after Chelsea's 3-1 win versus Villa. I mean, there's so much to talk about. We're not even going to cover that, even though there was a red card handed to a goalkeeper. Moving on. Chelsea had the tie break. So they were locked on points going into this weekend, but Chelsea had that tie break. They were +2 in goal differential over City. After this weekend, City beat West Ham 5-0. Sorry, Allie. City now sit 3 points ahead of Chelsea, but Chelsea have a game in hand now. But the +5 versus West Ham is huge, because it really feels like this battle might come down to goal differential. And now looking at goal differential, City are +3. Of course, Chelsea still have a game in hand, but the +3 is huge, because if Chelsea win just 1-0, City are still atop on goal differential.
That's the thing. That's I honestly think it is gonna come down to goal difference, because both teams have very similar runs. The only thing I will say is that Manchester City will take on 3rd place Arsenal, which could be a stumbling block. But it's probably one of the closest title races we've had in a very long time. I mean, obviously, it took to the final day last weekend with Man United, but it's actually, rather than points, it's going to come down to goals.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Arsenal. So Chelsea have a game in hand. Technically, that game in hand was game 18 versus Tottenham. That's going to be played on May 15th. Let's take a look at the remaining schedules, because you mentioned that City are hosting Arsenal. Let's go through what City have left, and let's also go through what Chelsea have left, because I think that there's a couple games on both of their schedules that a team could play spoiler to either City or Chelsea.
Yeah, so looking at Chelsea, they've got Liverpool on the 1st of May, which is only 3 days after their Champions League, or 4 days after their Champions League match, which could be. Liverpool have been known to stump them, and, you know, they beat Man United this season, which they hadn't done before. Liverpool are on a trajectory.
That's at Liverpool.
And that's at Liverpool. Again, lots of travelling. Could be thing. They then take on Bristol City on the Sunday. Got Spurs on Wednesday the 15th. And then they've got the final game of the season is Man United. At Man United, it's going to be at Old Trafford.
Yeah, I mean, it might be set up that United could play spoiler to Chelsea. But quite frankly, Tottenham could play spoiler as well. Tottenham are playing very well, and especially to close out the season, they've stayed consistent, which is something we haven't seen from Tottenham a lot. They are closing out the season strongly, so don't just circle that United game. There's a few here that could trip Chelsea up. And on the other hand, City, they're at Bristol City this weekend, then they're hosting Arsenal the following, and then at Aston Villa to close out the season. I mean, you got to circle that Arsenal game. Anything can happen there.
That's the one. That's the one that's going to potentially decide the title.
All right, and let's move on to the relegation battle. We will unfortunately be saying goodbye to Bristol City. They'll head down to the championship.
It's not mathematically certain yet.
Okay, I was just about to say that, but it's kind of certain.
It's kind of certain. Like, I say this.
Well, yeah, you talk about this, because the team just ahead of Bristol City is your beloved West Ham. Let's hear it all.
It is. So technically, each team has 3 games left. Bristol have to win all 3 games and hope that West Ham lose all 3 games for there to be a great escape. The problem is Bristol are playing Man City, Chelsea, and then the final game against Everton, whereas West Ham's run is Villa, Leicester, and Spurs. So
it would be the greatest of great escapes ever done in the history of great escapes if they can pull this off.
So by next weekend, we will know for certain whether a great escape can happen or if we are saying goodbye to Bristol.
But on the plus side, it looks like Crystal Palace are going to be the newest addition to the WSL. It's sad to say goodbye to a team, but it's always really fun to welcome one. It's a really tight battle at the top of the championship, though. Technically, Crystal Palace haven't quite done it. They're just 3 points ahead of Charlton. Final game of the season is this weekend. Crystal Palace is going to take on the number 3 Sunderland, who have also had a great season. So that's not a given that Crystal Palace will win. Of course, if they do win, it's locked, it's done, they'll move on. But if they lose, they could suffer defeat, and then Charlton would have to win and make up a goal difference. But then when you look at the goal difference, it's really just, it's not going to happen.
But no, the championship this year has been so exciting because normally what happens is you get a team that's been relegated from the WSL sort of running away with it to get back up. And normally it's like a season turnaround. We saw that with Liverpool. We saw that with Bristol. This year, Reading have secured themselves back in the championship, but are not anywhere near the title. Birmingham City, who had a dodgy start, an okay middle, and now having a dodgy end, nowhere near this title. So we're going to get a brand new WSL competitor, which is so exciting.
And 2 teams, when you look at the championship, are going to be relegated from the championship. We already know who those are. And Allie, you said we know who is being promoted into the championship.
We do already know who's going to be promoted. So it is going to be Portsmouth and it is Newcastle are going up to the championship. And that's going to be exciting because there's a lot of, for my UK listeners, there's a lot of North East teams already in the championship. So Sunderland are there, Durham are there. To throw in Newcastle, we're going to get a lot of derbies, baby. We're going to get a lot of juicy derbies in the championship.
I'll say Lewis and Watford are going to be the teams that are relegated. Disappointing for them, but Lewis played Crystal Palace this past weekend, and they had a record attendance for them of 2,614 to see that match. I'm just going to say, when you look at the championship right now, we just talked about Crystal Palace and how they're barely ahead of Charlton. This is why we need 2 teams promoted and 2 teams relegated from the WSL. I genuinely think if we're doing it at the bottom of the championship, we're relegating 2, we're promoting 2, why not do that at the top of the championship, promote 2 to the WSL, relegate 2 from the WSL. More movement will be better for the game.
And finally to the NWSL. This weekend of games, again, somebody put on Twitter, the NWSL is just NWSLing. And it's so true. So we've currently got 3 teams that are undefeated. And they, if you told me at the beginning of the NWSL season that these would be the 3, I would have probably laughed in your face.
Well, also, if I had told you that, but then told you how they were all undefeated, you would have been like, what in the world is going on?
Yes.
So let's get into it. Because I think last week we highlighted that Racing Louisville were still undefeated. They remain undefeated, but we didn't get to highlight the other teams. So let's do it.
Yeah, so the other 2 teams that are undefeated are Kansas City and Orlando, along with Racing. The Pride won over San Diego, and we will get into that because that was a crazy game. The 1-0 does not do it justice, let me tell you. So, the Pride won against San Diego, and they are now for 2 wins, 3 draws, 0 losses. Racing won 5-1 against Utah, and we got to talk about Utah and what a crash to earth this has been for them coming back. This was their first win of the year, which makes them with 1 win, 4 draws and 0 losses. And then Kansas City beat Sarah's beloved Bay FC at Kansas City. It was 5-2. Again, another NWSL.
Kansas Citying is what it is right now.
And they are atop of the NWSL table right now. They have 4 wins, 1 draw and 0 losses. This stadium is becoming such a fortress for teams to come in and play.
If only they made it bigger and there were more people allowed in the stadium.
And there was more car parking.
Oh, man. But, I mean, what a wild start to the year. If you look at the table at the end of last year versus the beginning of this year, it's as if the teams on top last year flipped to the bottom. this year, and the teams on bottom last year flipped to the top. It is absolutely insane. 2023, the top 4 teams to finish were, in this order, San Diego Wave, Portland, North Carolina, and then Seattle. Now let's look at the table right now. Seattle, Portland, and San Diego have just 1 win each. They all sit at the bottom. And I'm going to throw in my also beloved Gotham FC, who won the title and also have just 1 win, also sitting at the bottom of the table right now. And then you look at the bottom of the table from last year. Racing Louisville, Houston, Kansas City, Chicago, all finished at the bottom. Those were the bottom 4. This year, top 4 right now, Kansas City, Chicago, Washington, and North Carolina. Basically, the whole table has flipped other than Houston. A tear shed for Houston, which we are also going to talk about. We have a lot to discuss.
So yeah, first off, Portland, after a terrible first run, got their first win this weekend. They took the lead first and then conceded, I believe, just before halftime or just after halftime. And then
Just after
halftime. And then suddenly, boom, 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 and it's a 4-1 win, which they will be grateful for. Sorry, Dash.
Yeah. I mean, the Thorns beating Houston, first win for Portland. I mean, no disrespect to Houston, but if they would not have beaten Houston, we all would have been sitting here like, has hell frozen over? Portland have not shown up this year. And I mean, neither has Seattle. We've talked about both of them already, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on them right now, but it's just stale. Both Portland and Seattle, like we've said before on this podcast, lost a lot of players and did not do the work in the offseason to replace them, to maybe not 1-for-1 replace them, but bring in new talent to try to find maybe some new form, a new system. No, they've just stuck with what they have, and it's not working.
It is not working. I do want to bring in another team's conversation. We've just talked about them being undefeated, but I want to talk about Orlando for a little bit.
I would love to talk about Orlando.
Let's talk about Orlando, because this team, we said last year, and you can go fact check us, because we said last year, they had a lot of young talent. They had a really young squad, and they did decently last season. They were decent. They had some good wins. They had a couple of scrapey wins, a couple of not great losses, but they were decent. This year, they have really come together as a unit. They've obviously got the talisman player, which is Marta, who is just still doing Marta things and is fantastic. But I want to talk about their defense, because defensively they have come together. They've got such a strong back, like 5, including the goalkeeper. Anna Morehouse is leading that defense so well. She is becoming such a great shot stopper for them. And just defensively as a unit, that 5 are just taking it on. And like we said, we're seeing them, like, yeah, they've had it's been draws with a couple of wins, but they are not leaking goals like they used to. Orlando were always sort of propping up the bottom of the table, and they've now grown as a team. They've got some great talisman players. The goal against San Diego was such a team goal. If you haven't watched this match, you should, because literally you just see them pinging balls left and right, and then it was, I believe, Yates who just tapped it in because they'd drawn the goalkeeper out the other side. And I think this is Orlando just building for a resurgence.
I mean, yeah, there's so much to say. When we talk about Orlando, last year, they get the most improved trophy from start to finish. They were interesting at the start because it was just basically a bunch of new players. And we were like, how's this going to come together? Turns out really well. If you don't remember, they ever so narrowly missed out on playoffs. I don't remember. I think it was goal differential. It could be wrong, or just 1 point in the table. And they've built on that this year. It's no surprise that they have come out this strong. The youth aren't really rookies anymore. They've got some experience. They know how to play together a little bit more. Some big signings. Need I remind everybody, Barbara Banda plays on this team now. The Zambian star plays on Orlando. And if you look at, just who came off of the bench for Orlando in this game against San Diego? Raffaelli, Adriana and Barbara Banda all off of the bench. And you can bet that some of those players like Banda are going to be incorporated more and more as they slowly, meld with the team and into the system. And they're just going to get more and more terrifying. You said it, Allie. That defense has become lockdown. And then they added those threats that I just mentioned.
And it was Abello, I couldn't remember the player, it was Abello who did this amazing run down to draw the goalkeeper out, drew Sheridan out, and it was Yates who got the tap in, and yeah, hands out down to Orlando. It's exciting stuff.
It really is. We're going to touch on two other teams right now. The second one, Utah, because I know you want to talk Utah, and I think we have to. Utah, a brand new expansion team, new back this year, we'll say. Quick history. Of course, Utah folded. They had terrible ownership. We're not going to get into the details. That team essentially got moved to Kansas City. Utah didn't have a team, and then they were allowed to buy back into the NWSL. They are one of two expansion teams this year, along with Bay FC. Utah Royals, when we saw them building the team, we were kind of like, I'm not sure what this is going to look like. Seems like a lot of different pieces that don't fit together in a puzzle. And for me, that's exactly what it's been.
Like, I was excited that A-Rod was coming in as manager. I think she's such a huge part of Utah history. It was a massive thing, and I was excited by that. But it did feel like, yes, it was an expansion draft, but whereas I feel the other team with Bay sort of had a game plan and knew what they wanted to do pieces-wise, Utah got everybody's odds and ends, and it's not a cohesive team. And it's going to such a huge learning curve for them. And the next match is against the Houston Dash, and that's going to be a real battle of whether they're going to remain a bottom of the table team, or if this is something that they're going to learn as the game goes on. They are, of course, the big thing is they are quite controversial at the moment, and there is a protest going on because, is it both kits or just their home kit? Because I've seen it as the home, both kits, is sponsored by American First, and it's a bank or it's a savings company.
I don't know what it is, but they are known for being, their owners are very, let's just say, call it what it is, Trumpy. And let's just, just to be frank, Nazis, white supremacists, bigoted, racist, all of the terrible things.
Union. So it's America First Credit Union is the shirt sponsor for Utah. The problem being, many reasons, but the way the design is done for the shirt, it's America First in massive letters, and then Credit Union is a tiny little byline underneath it. So
not great implications when you start to think about it.
America First, which in recent history has been adopted by very right-wing Republicans, but also has history for the neo-Nazis in the 30s, 40s, and blah, blah, blah. So there is now a protest going on from fans, from opposition players, about them wearing these shirts with America First emblazoned on them. So it's not the greatest inaugural season for this new Utah team.
No. Not a great way to sell jerseys off the bat, that's for sure. Look, I'm glad people are bringing it to the forefront. I'm glad it's being protested. At the end of the day, like when we talk about reality, they're not going to be able to get out of this contract right now. These shirts are what they are going to be wearing for the rest of the season. What happens at the end of the season? I'm not sure. I haven't looked at their contract. Their hands are tied right now. Is it still their fault because they didn't do their research and their due diligence, or they just didn't care enough to think that this would matter to people? Yes, that is not good. But right now, where we are, nothing, unfortunately, is going to change until the end of the season at the very least. But it's still terrible. I'm just gonna say. I'm not. Hopefully, it doesn't sound like I'm trying to be like, oh, they're fine. It's whatever. It's just like this is where we are. There's not really gonna be changes to be made. I just like if it's a jersey sponsor, I can't even see it being allowed for players themselves to like put tape over the front or something like that. It's just all tied up in legality, and I don't know that the team has enough money to get out of it. I hope they do. I don't know. Like, I don't know how it sounds right now, but like, this is just the cold hard reality of like, if you're sitting in that front office right now, probably what's happening, what the conversations are. It's terrible though. Let me be clear. Hopefully that was obvious. Can you confirm that it was obvious that I felt
Sarah
like
still,
I feel like it's
Sarah
terrible?
still feels that she went too
Okay,
easy on
good.
Corbett Albert, so now she's like, no, there is no grey area.
Everything is
There's no grey area. You will know what I feel.
And that's a great note to end on. As a reminder, head to our Patreon, patreon.com/thewoso show to get extra content. There's actually 4 postings going up this week. The 2 from last week and then the 2 from this week. They're all going to be up.
Yeah, absolutely. So please do check out our Patreon because there was a lot of guesses and there were some great guesses over who our mystery guest.
I led you all astray. I really apologize for that.
It did make me laugh when somebody did tweet going, but that's a terrible clue, Sarah. And they are right. So please head over to our Patreon for our wonderful interview with the wonderful player. I'm still so excited that we got her. I'm doing it.
Just say the name. Just say the name.
Chloe Morgan. It was a brilliant chat. We had a great time with her. So please check out the unedited, unfiltered interview that is on our Patreon.
It did make me feel bad when people were guessing Mia Hamm, and I was like, ooh,
I know, somebody said
too
Ellen
hard
White,
there.
and I was like, I wish, but Chloe's equally awesome.
I need you all to rest assured that if Mia Hamm ever comes on this podcast, I won't be able to keep it a secret. I probably won't be able to do the interview because I'll be passed out because 7-year-old me will be unable to breathe. But that's for another time. All right, and that's it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.